Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us at Streamline Contract Management with the Salesforce integration. We are super excited to get the webinar started. We are just going to give it a minute just to give everyone a chance to get into the webinar. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for the Streamline Contract Management with the Salesforce integration webinar. We are very excited to be sharing content with you guys around Salesforce integration and how that can impact your contract management. Before we get kicked off, I do want to mention a couple of housekeeping rules. We do want the webinar to be as interactive as possible. So with that, you do have a Q&A button either at the top or the bottom of your screen. Please use that to ask any questions you may have for our panelists. We will also ensure that you get a copy of the recording as well as the deck within the week after the webinar. Now, without further ado, I will be giving you over to Howard to get us kicked off.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to our webinar today. I'm here with two colleagues today, and we're going to speak to the challenges of contract management specifically around sales and how that can be helped by the use of ContractPodAi integrated with Salesforce. Each of us here today has a unique lens, a unique view on this problem. So just to introduce myself at the beginning, Howard Wassall. I head up the pre-sales and partner enablement team here at ContractPodAi for Europe. I've been in the CLM industry now for 5 years. And one of the things I've noticed there is one of the real drivers of time to value for contract management is that integration with other key applications within an organization, Salesforce being one particular case of that. With that, Jess, let me hand over to you.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here with you today. I'm Jessica King, and I head up the pre-sales team here in the US. I'm actually also formerly an attorney. I've been an editor at Practical Law as well. So I've really dedicated my career to understanding lawyer problems and helping find solutions for those problems. And so this is kind of going to be the lens I'm going to be speaking to you about today around, what are the problems that legal's facing in the sales contracting process. Over to you, Ed.
Thanks, Jess, and hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Ed Smith. I'm a director of sales here at ContractPod. I've been with the company coming up on 4 years now, 10 plus years in sales, 6 to 7 of which have been in legal tech. Not an attorney by trade, but I know some of the ins and outs, and I'm here to provide the perspective on the sales side of things, and happy to participate, and thank you all for joining.
Great, thank you both. So let's start by taking a look at some of the business challenges that both the sales team and the legal team face. Now, according to Pace Productivity, salespeople spend just 22% of their time on average actually selling. There's a whole set of other activities, usually administrative activities, that they have to undertake. Ed, perhaps you can give some insight around that.
Yeah, absolutely, Howard. So I think that this probably rings true for any and all sales professional out there. Probably rings true for people that aren't even in sales, just hearing salespeople complain about all the work they have to do outside of actually selling, right? To speak to this, I think it's absolutely a truth that, you don't get a ton of time in front of the customer. And as a salesperson, you want to optimize the time you have in front of a customer, right? But you're burdened by a lot of different other things, just administrative tasks, internal meetings, updating Salesforce, which is always a pain. But then the contracting process as well can eat into some of this time, right? So I think the ultimate goal for any salesperson is how can we maximize our time in front of the customer, where we're doing actual selling activities, whether that's prospecting or product demos or introductory calls, whatever it might be, and reduce the amount of time that we spend on administrative tasks. So one thing that we'll be looking at particularly is how we can do that in the contracting process, and ultimately get this number to 30 to 40% to 50% of our time, where we can actually maximize our selling activity. So Howard, I'd say this certainly hits a sweet spot for me, I'd say.
Great, thanks a lot, Ed. And now let's take a look at things from the perspective of the legal team. Deloitte undertook some research, and legal teams were saying that 76% of their time was spent undertaking manual tasks, and using even the current technologies they've got, they're able to reduce that down to 18%. Jess, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that absolutely resonates with the research that I've done over the years around, the work that lawyers wish they were doing, the work that they're actually doing. So, finding those precedent documents so you know how negotiated last time, or tracking down somebody who worked on a similar contract before so you can get their thoughts, right? Those are a lot of issues that arise when you don't have centralized contracting. And that means that, you're going to also then be fielding questions from sales about why the process is taking so long. And as well as, if we can synchronize some of those administrative tasks, like capturing, customer information and feeding that to the relevant parties, that's just going to have it so that people, if administrative work does need to be done, we're not going to get rid of that ever, I don't think, but we can, help some of that administrative work be circulated to all the relevant parties, so that, it doesn't have to be done more than once.
That's great, Jess. Thanks for that. And one of the key things around contract management as part of the process of helping to actually reduce those areas of almost a pain that we've been looking at just there, is that contract development and contract management can have a large impact on annual revenues. For example, the World Commerce and Contracting Association identified that it can increase annual revenues by 9% if those processes are put in place and actually run through within a CLM platform. It impacts the entire business, not just sales and legal. It has an impact much broader than that. But one of the things we need to look at is how we can really smooth out that process within an organization, and specifically take a look at some of the friction points that can occur between the sales team and the legal team within an organization when we're looking at contract management. So let's take a look at things from the perspective of the sales and legal teams. The sales team are focused on closing deals. They're prioritizing speed and flexibility. Their job is to get that deal over the line, get it contracted, and get that revenue coming into the country. And this is all around the area of risk tolerance. Whereas if we look at the legal team, well, they're there to prioritize the company's interests. They've got to ensure that contracts are correct, that they're enforceable, they meet their standards, they're correct against regulations. During contract negotiation, the sales team want to optimize contract terms. They want to win the business. They want to gear the contract to making sure that happens, and maybe push things beyond the comfort level of the legal team whilst they're doing so. But obviously, the legal team don't want that to happen. They want to keep control over that contract as well during the negotiation process. And with regards to communications between those two teams, the sales team can perceive the legal team to be slowing things down in that process. They're forever asking, where's my contract, for example? And legal can often feel that sales don't involve them early enough within the life cycle of those contracts. Ed, Jess, would really value your thoughts around these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick us off. So I think this is obviously a classic tale for any revenue generating organization or any sales focused organization, right? As a sales professional, our goal is to increase revenue as quickly as possible, right? And we go through so many hurdles getting the customer up to the point where we're ready to solidify a deal. At the end of the day, we don't want any hurdles to jump through internally, right? So we think about the perspective of like, hey, this is a very high priority. We need to do X, Y, Z for the customer. We need to get this done quickly. And that can create some friction, obviously, with legal that says, hey, okay, yeah, we can get this done, but we can't open ourselves up to all this risk just because we want to get a deal done, right? So that's where the friction takes place, right? But I think there's an obvious way to solve for that, right? And that's what we'll dig into a bit here going forward. But I think one of the key pieces here is communication, especially for the sales folks, right? We don't want to go into a black box after we, send a request to Jess, for example, and say, hey, have this customer, we're moving forward. We want to get a contract going. Here's some of the information, and then nothing, right? So we don't want to have to ping Jess every hour on the hour, pick up the phone and call her all the time. Jess doesn't want to have to deal with that either. So that's one of the key friction points I think we want to solve for, but always maintain those guardrails within the negotiation that legal prefers as well. So.
Yeah, that black box really just doesn't suit anybody. So I think to the extent that we can, give that visibility into where the contract is at in the process to getting it hopefully signed, the better for everybody. Additionally, with a tool for legal, you're really going to be able to, prioritize the company's interests, but make sure that you're really focusing on negotiating the things that matter, right? On the things that are really going to be kind of key for your company, for your company's health, which is then going to just, speed up that negotiation process and limit some of that friction with sales around contract turnaround times, because you are focusing on the things that matter. And then you can also feed that back to the sales team as well. And then, having that visibility across the entire process for both parties is just going to help everybody's lives be happier, hopefully.
Absolutely. That's great. Thanks both. Really useful insight there. So we've taken a look at some of the business issues. We've taken a look at the friction points. Let's take a look at how they can be solved. The way this can be solved or at least reduced is by putting in place an integration between ContractPodAi and Salesforce. And by doing that, what we're really enabling is both of those teams to continue working in the tools that they're most familiar with. I'm sure, as Ed can attest, a salesperson spends an awful lot of time within Salesforce, very much part of the role. So why should they have to leave that in order to request contracts and work against contracts? On the other side, the legal team spend a lot of their time working in Outlook and Word or Gmail and GDocs. So why should they have to leave those platforms as well? What the integration provides is the ability for those teams to continue using the tools they're most familiar with, as well as ContractPodAi, to really automate that end-to-end process in the most efficient way possible across the life cycle of those contracts. So if we look initially specifically at how ContractPodAi can help to automate those processes, you can create customizable workflows within the platform to drive the contract through its life cycle, all the way from the selection of a contract type through to the request for a contract, be that via self-service, be that via the request for a contract and that going immediately to legal review, from there onto that legal review, and we can bring AI to bear to help with that. And from there onwards, via approvals into e-signature. And the key point being, as we'll go into, is that a lot of that process can now be driven from Salesforce, as well as from within Word, Outlook, and within ContractPodAi itself. We can enable the tracking of obligations, for example. We can provide data and analytics around those contracts. We'll come to that a little bit more in a little while. Jess, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think too, around this automation of workflow, having a system that is flexible to your business requirements is really key for success here, because for that, you know, we can automate actions from Salesforce within that contracting process to get it routed to the right person for review. We can have workflows that show, you know, which stage of the contract, where the contract is actually at. Maybe it's with a legal review, maybe it's with a business review or a third-party review. So you can really see who has the contract and when, so that again reduces the risk that steps were skipped, and it gives that visibility to all parties, so that they can keep on top of the work.
And I'll just add on to that. You know, I think the goal is to create a win-win scenario, right? Make sure the relationship between legal and sales is a good one and not a one full of friction, but giving each side what they need in this process. So from the sales perspective, if I'm able to go in Salesforce, I have some rich data in there around the particular customer that we want to work with. Legals give me the guardrails to one-click create an NDA or one-click create a new master services agreements. That's just taking that 22% and getting it to maybe 23, 24, 25%, even just being able to do that in an efficient way. The visibility is there. Jess can focus on high priority work, and then once red lines come back, then she can get involved, or legal counsel can get involved. So they stay hands off until they're kind of needed in the process. That's the win-win goal that we're looking for here.
Great, thank you very much both. So moving on, as we mentioned earlier, one of the areas of friction between the two teams potentially is around communications and collaboration. And again, this is where this integration can really help, because the salesperson is requesting the creation of that contract directly in Salesforce, but it's immediately passed through into ContractPodAi. The legal team can be immediately available that contract has started its life cycle. Even if it's a self-service straight through one, they'll still see it within there. They'll still be able to report against it. Where legal review is required, legal will be immediately notified of that fact, and they can undertake that review again within the platform, within Word, within Outlook. Both parties, as mentioned, have clear visibility of exactly where that contract is within its life cycle, within the pertinent platform for them. And we can drive communication collaboration across those two platforms as well, just to reduce that friction even further. Moving on from there, one of the key aspects of the ContractPodAi platform is AI-powered review. And we can really use that to help accelerate the legal review of any contracts as it goes through its life cycle. We can measure compliance and risk using AI. We can extract key clauses from a contract during the negotiation process and compare that to our standard positions. We can even use AI to guide the negotiation process itself, perhaps even providing alternate language. Jess, do you want to give us a little more insight around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the key kind of takeaway here is that accelerate legal review, right? So that you're spending the time negotiating things that actually matter. You're not digging for precedents, and you can get that contract really turned around more quickly so that we can get that, time to value, and time to signature down. So for that sales team, which is just going to benefit the business as a whole, make legal more focused on negotiating, like I said, things that matter, and focusing on that high value work, not hunting for precedents, not trying to track down who worked on something the last time. That information can all be surfaced easily for you so that you can focus on what matters.
That's great. Thanks very much, Jess. And because we are creating these contracts within ContractPodAi, wherever the source of that request is. So, the source of that request, as we're discussing today, is from Salesforce via the integration. And that's also bringing through a whole set of data from Salesforce that's used during the creation of that contract, but also for reporting. It's not necessarily data that actually goes into the contract. We can capture all that data within the platform, and you can search against it, you can report against it. But we do provide a set of out-of-the-box dashboards, analytics that can really give you insight into those contracts in there. And we have a specific set of those we provide. So one, for example, as you can see here, is for the legal operations team, giving them insight into the actual contracts themselves and the analytics of those. Jess, perhaps you can give us some thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I think that, with these dashboards and legal ops insights in particular, it lets you see how you stack up against like companies. So maybe there are areas where your legal team can improve. Maybe there are some areas where you're a little bit slower to review, or we're not automating contracts like other companies are. Those can be legitimate areas to focus on and work around process improvements using a tool such as this. But also it can show you, maybe sales needs to be more proactive in authoring their own contracts. Maybe they need to really take that first pass themselves, to take some of that initial drafting off of legal's work using automated templates. So we can provide insights around both teams around how we're using contracting in the system, where we're doing well and where we can improve.
Great, thanks, Jess. And another dashboard we provide is a dashboard for the Chief Revenue Officer. We provide a set of C-level executive dashboards as such, but one of those is geared towards the requirements of the Chief Revenue Officer. Now, clearly, they're also going to be looking at reporting in Salesforce, but we can bring key insight into the contracts that are in progress and already signed, that have been captured within ContractPodAi, specifically for the CRO. And this is real-time data. They can truly see where their contracts are right now within their life cycle and within their business. They can look at things like how many contracts are currently active, how many require renewal, how many have expired, average time of signature by a salesperson, maybe some great insight to be learned from that. Ed, would you like to give us your thoughts around this?
Yeah, absolutely. So any sales leader, CRO, VP of sales, they love reports, right? And it's obviously a critical aspect of being a sales leader, right? If we kind of think back to that quote or that number provided by the World CC, a proper contract management process can lead to a 9% increase in annual revenue. This is the area where the rubber meets the road, right? These analytics can show that value that a CLM is bringing to an organization, and even further, how an integration with Salesforce and a contract management solution can do that as well, right? So for a CRO or a high-level sales leader, if they have the visibility to say, hey, here's all the open contracts that are pending but plan to close this month, that's fantastic for forecasting. If they can see any contract that is coming up for renewal, they can focus their attention on that to say, hey, how do we make sure that we have great customer satisfaction with these particular companies and retain them? Similar with expirations, right? So this shows some high-level metrics that are their quality for board meetings or executive presentations, understanding speed to signature within the contracting process. And so then you can really display and see the value that a contract management solution brings as not just a cost savings and efficiency mechanism, but as a means to increase revenue year over year.
That's great. Thanks very much, Ed. Okay, so we've we've spoken about some of the business metrics that people look at. We've spoken about the friction. We've spoken about how the integration between ContractPodAi and Salesforce can help reduce that friction. So let's go ahead and show you a demonstration of exactly how that works. So as a starting point, I'm within an opportunity within Salesforce. It's a standard opportunity object. I can see where my opportunity is within its life cycle. I can see the name of the opportunity. But also on the right-hand side of the screen, I can see a number of contracts we've already created against this opportunity. In this case, they're master services agreements. We're creating the right type of contract at the right level. So for example, up at the account level, we might create an NDA. At this level, we might create a master services agreement. But I also have a number of quotes that I've been proposing to my customer and negotiating with them from a financial perspective. We've settled on quote number 3 here, net value of £1,800. So I can take a look at that quote within Salesforce, and once again, it's a standard quote record. It has all the detail you'd expect within a quote record, but also on the right-hand side, it has a set of contracts we've created against this particular quote as well. In this case, it's an order form as opposed to a master services agreement, but we have visibility of all the contracts we've created against this quote. If we take a look at the related list of this quote, we can see this quote includes a number of line items, 4 in this case, and these are actually a mix between software services, that's the first 3, and success services. And when we want to generate that order form, we want to make sure there's a clear delineation between those. We actually want to provide those as 2 separate tables within the quote that we generate. And we can go ahead and generate that quote by selecting the Generate Order Form button. Now that's going to summarize these quote details for us. And as you can see, this is already broken down the software services and those success services for us into 2 separate tables at this level. We can provide the contact that we're going to use for this particular order form. That will be the person it gets sent out to for electronic signature. And from there, we can go ahead and request this contract be created within ContractPodAi. So selecting a single button here, or 2 buttons there, via our integration, ContractPodAi will now go ahead and create that order form based on our standard order form template with all our standard language in there that's been created and approved by the legal team. Now, we immediately have access to a contract record, again, within Salesforce. And we can see that we have a first version of that order form that's been generated for us. And that has been synchronized straight back into Salesforce. We can go ahead from there and view that particular record as well. Oh, I think I'm not sure if that's stopped there. Try that again. There we go. From there, we can go ahead and preview the order form. So we can see the order form that's been created. And again, this will be our standard template, but key here, we can see that that's been broken out nicely for us into 2 separate tables. We've got those software services, we've got those success services. And we can review the rest of that order form just to make sure it's exactly what we would wish to send out to our customer. But we can go ahead and close that. And again, directly from Salesforce via the integration, we can now send this contract out for electronic signature. And in this case, we're actually using DocuSign as a service for electronic signature. And that's an integration that we provide out of the box at ContractPodAi. So once that's returned to us, once again, within Salesforce, we can see exactly where we are with this contract. We can see that we're building out an electronic signature history. We can see it's been sent out to Jess at Acme for her signature for that particular order form. We can see also, that frozen again. There we go. Just waiting there. We see that now Jess has received an email asking her to review and sign this order form directly from DocuSign. So that's gone from Salesforce through ContractPodAi, our integration there, out to DocuSign via our integration there. And Jess, now acting as the third party, can go ahead and review the order form, make sure it aligns with what was negotiated with her, and can go ahead and sign that contract within DocuSign and complete that signature process. And now, as that process is being completed, DocuSign will pass an updated status of that signed order form back to ContractPod. It will send back that signed document, and again, via our integration, they will be passed also directly back into Salesforce as well, so that and as we can see, the status is updated as awaiting signature. We're still looking at e-sign history, but we can go ahead and, waiting just a moment longer, we can refresh our screen, and we'll be able to see in Salesforce directly that that signature process has been completed. So as you can see here, the salesperson has not had to leave Salesforce at all to generate that order form, send it out for signature, and be updated as that contract goes through its life cycle. We can see here now that we have a signed version of that contract, and we can see that it's now active as it's been signed, and we can preview also that signed version of that order form within Salesforce and see that it has indeed been signed. So we have a full record in Salesforce of the life cycle there and that final signed version of the contract as well. So that's a straight through process. That's really smoothing out those areas of friction from the perspective of the salesperson by enabling simple contracts to be driven through. But also within Salesforce, the salesperson or sales management can use standard Salesforce reporting to report against those contracts that have been created within ContractPod. The detail of those contracts has been synchronized back. And here, for example, we can see we've got one contract that's currently active, and we've another 3 where a request has been submitted. So they're currently maybe with legal running through their life cycle within the ContractPodAi platform. Now, returning back to our opportunity, so that was a straight through process. Let's take a look at a process where we bring legal into the equation as well. And one of the key things here was how does legal quickly find out that their new contract's being created and they need to work on it? Well, via the integration, all created contracts are now created within ContractPod directly using, again, our standard templates for a master services agreement in this case that's been created and approved by legal. So from within our opportunity, the salesperson can click a single button and request that contract be created. And once again, we'll see a contract record created within Salesforce. So again, they can understand exactly where that contract is. We can see we've got a first version of that contract's been created for us. And we can see that the contract is currently in the negotiation stage. We've got all the detail of that contract available to us here as well. And that is information in the main that's been pulled through from Salesforce. We've got the counterparty, we've got all of their details there that's been pulled through and can now be used within that contract. We have a set of other actions that we can undertake now immediately against this contract from within Salesforce. So again, the salesperson doesn't necessarily have to lead Salesforce to send a contract out for signature or send it out for review by email, for example. But as we take this contract through its life cycle further, we will create things like reminders, we will create tasks that the salesperson needs to undertake, and they'll all be pushed back into Salesforce for them. But from here, we can actually transition directly now into ContractPodAi. And this is the platform that a member of the legal team would be using to manage the life cycle of this contract. And within ContractPod, same contract, we can see the same information. We can see it's in negotiation stage. We can see details of the counterparty here as well. And we can see a whole series of actions that we can undertake against this contract. So again, some of these will be familiar from that Salesforce view. We can also take a look at other information around this contract. So for example, once again, we can view the versions of that. Now, all we've done so far is create the first version of this master services agreement. So that's the only version we see in there. Were we to have any attachments associated with this contract, we could see those. Were there any important dates captured around that contract, we could see those. And we'll come back to these at a later step as well. You'll see some information, further information about these areas, key obligations, key clauses, comments. This is a key means of collaborating between the team within a business. So for example, between the legal team, also the sales team, and maybe the finance team. But in this case, what we'd like to do is send it out to another member of our legal team to review this first version of the MSA before we would send it out to a third party for their review, for example. So via collaboration, we can send a message to Jess to say, please review this contract. Jess will get a notification from ContractPod telling her that this comment has been added, and from that she would expect to receive an email including that contract for her review. So here we can just fill in the address of the person we wish to actually send that contract out for review. We can add a subject. We can add whatever body text we would like there. The document itself has already been included, and that email can be sent out to them for that review. Now, again, if we look at our versions here, we can see a little audit trail being built up against this version. We can see that it was created via one of our standard templates, and we can see that it's now been sent out to Jess for her review. And going back to what we were talking about before, and the team using the tools they're most used to using, Jess can actually undertake that review directly from within Outlook. The email includes the Word document of that contract, in the MSA in this case. She could download that, make some changes to that, completing her review, add comments, make changes as needs be. But then directly from within Outlook, she can now send that new version of the contract back into the platform. So in this case, we're demonstrating the ability to search for any contract within the platform. You can do that directly from Outlook and start interacting with that contract straight from Outlook. We've moved into the request lounge here. And from within the request lounge, we can choose to upload that newly reviewed version of that contract back into ContractPod. So we're uploading a new version. We're going to run AI against that to show you some of the analytics that are taking place against that and some of the review that's taking place against that as we do. There's been an additional attachment attached to MSA markup.txt. Maybe that's a description of what's been changed. That can be stored against the contract. And we can go ahead, add some comments against there. So in this case, ACME's markup. And we can go ahead and submit that new version of the contracts back into ContractPod directly from Outlook. So again, allowing the legal team to carry on using the tools with which they're most familiar. Now, returning to the ContractPod screen for that particular master services agreement, we can now move on to take a further look at the latest version of that contract. So now potentially it's a different user here. Maybe it went back to a different member of the legal team. They can log in, they can look in the repository against all the contracts, they can find the contract we've just been working on. They could have been notified that that's what they need to do. And from here, we can take a look at the versions. And we can see we've now got two versions. We've got the original version we created, and we've got that new version that's just come back from Jess's review. And we can see that it's been uploaded, and we can see that commenting that ACME's markup in there as well. So we've got an audit trail of all of that. Now, what we elected to do when we uploaded this new version was run it against our AI engine. That AI engine has extracted a set of key obligations, key clauses within that contract. So we can see what's been changed against all of those very easily. Now, we're going to look at two, as part of this demonstration, we're going to look at two particular clauses within here, that insurance clause and a termination for convenience clause. Now, one way we can actually go ahead and do that is by using the compare function of ContractPodAi, where we can compare any two versions of the contract to see what's changed between them. In this case, we're just going to compare our first two versions of this contract. And opening up the comparison screen, we can see immediately that some text has been deleted. Even if the counterparty here turned off redlining, we'll still be able to recognize immediately what's changed within that contract. And in this case, some text has been deleted from the termination for convenience clause. And to be honest, this is certainly a far less favorable version of that clause for us. So we're going to want to go ahead and make some changes to that clause from our side as well. We can also take a look at accepting selected changes, but we're not going to do that in this case. We're going to go ahead and also look at currency changes here. And we can see actually within the insurance clause that the limits of liability included within that have been increased greatly, in fact, multiplied by 10 from 100,000 to 1 million for each individual occurrence and 500,000 to 5 million aggregate across those contracts. And again, you know, this is now an unfavorable position from our perspective. So we're going to want to go ahead and make some further red lines to that particular contract. We're going to want to, obviously they're not going to accept our original position, so let's check some the new position. And just to say again, you know, we've got that new redlined version of that contract that we're going to be working on here. But a way that we can actually send out the contract internally for review, potentially to multiple parties, is to start out a collaboration. In this case, we can add a further person to that collaboration if we wish to, but we can actually kick off that collaboration within the online version of Word directly from within ContractPodAi. So this will now fire up Word Online for us with that latest version of that contract in there, with those changes in there that's been made by a counterparty or maybe another department within our organization. And you can use the usual Word means of searching, but here it's near the top. We can find that termination convenience clause. We know that there's an unfavorable change, so we're actually going to provide a new version of that, and we're going to say, okay, we're not going to accept no notice period, but we're going to compromise and go for 5 days in this case. And similarly, we can navigate down to our insurance clause, and we can take a look at the changes that have been made there. And once again, we're not happy with the changes that the other party made with our insurance clause. So we're not going to accept 1 million per occurrence. We'll go for 500,000. And we're not going to accept 5 million aggregate. We're going to change that to 2 million. So we can make our changes there. Now, if there were multiple parties editing this, internal parties editing this contract at the same time, we would all see each other's changes being made. We'd all see each other's contracts being put in play there. And importantly, whilst we're doing this, this is always being synchronized back into ContractPod. So there's always the latest and greatest version that's been stored within ContractPod. And indeed, if we take a look at the current versions, we've now got 3. We've got that first version we created, the redline version that came back, and we've got the version we're collaborating on. But collaboration is now finished. We're going to go ahead and we're going to lock that collaboration. That finishes that set of collaboration there. And from there, we can see that this contract now requires approval due to changes made within it, due to values, due to perhaps other changes to it. But we can now see that this contract requires approval, specifically legal approval. It's actually pending with 2 sets of individual within the organization. And just to show, that is also reflected within Salesforce. So once again, reducing that friction by making sure the sales team is always up to date with where this contract is within its life cycle. So here we can see we've got those 4 versions of the contract, and that latest version 4 that we've been working on. And we can also see that it's currently within approvals within there as well. So, reducing the number of times that a salesperson has to go to legal to ask, where's my contract? The salesperson can see exactly where it is at any point in time. You can also see those attachments that we added during that upload. We've got that signed version. We've got that markup text that we added during that redlining process as well that we brought in by our Outlook. But we can go ahead at this point in time and approve that contract. We can see it's now in an approved state within ContractPod. We could at this point send it out for electronic signature directly from within here. So perhaps it's the legal team's role to do so. But if indeed it is the sales team's role to do so, the salesperson's always got that view of where that contract is in the life cycle. They can be notified that it's now ready for electronic signature, and they can go ahead and do so directly from within Salesforce. So with that's the end of the demonstration. I hope that's given you a good view of how our integration with Salesforce can help to reduce that friction between the sales and legal teams and really enable that end-to-end contracting process to move through smoothly. We've lifted up a whole set of enterprise benefits here. We'll let you read through those, but we'd like to open up for questions and answers. I see we've got a number of questions in the Q&A session already, so thank you very much for that. I'll start to run through those and hand those over as necessary. There's a first question there: how do you duplicate entry across Salesforce and ContractPodAi? Our integration actually involves a component, essentially what's called a managed package, installed directly within Salesforce. We expose a set of APIs and we use those to keep the two platforms in sync. So requests going through from Salesforce to ContractPod are driven through that, and conversely, status updates, documents coming back from ContractPod to Salesforce are delivered in the same mechanism. So essentially, it's a native plugin to Salesforce that enables us to create that clean integration between the two. In terms of how long does it take to create the integration? Now, the integration is essentially out of the box with that managed plugin that is installed. It's a standard managed plugin that can be installed within Salesforce. There's always going to be some additional configuration there. I think it's a fact of the world that no two Salesforce implementations are alike. Everybody's got their local configuration. Everybody's got their own fields they're interested in. So the additional configuration is commonly purely mapping across the necessary fields. So the fields that you want in Salesforce to appear in your contract, there's essentially a graphical UI allows you to map those across. So it's quite a simple process to do so. Can you customize reporting? Jess, could I hand that one over to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So in ContractPod, we have, I think, of details reporting and big picture reporting. So in those details reporting, you can absolutely go and build kind of custom reports very, very simply yourselves, capturing those data points and those contracts that you want to report against very quickly and easily. But then we have our big picture reporting, which Howard showed on a couple of slides, which give you those dashboards to visualize that data. Those are out of the box, but they, one, are very dynamic to the configurations that you have set up in the system. So those workflows that you set up, those contract types that you've set up, those are all going to be reflected in the data points in that. And then you can also go down and filter down according to your requirements. So if you're only interested in a certain contract type, you want to see reports across that, those dashboards across that, very easy to do with just a click of a button. So you can get that really detailed, data set that you want to visualize.
That's great. Thanks, Jess. Next question that's come in is, how do you license for sales users? Ed, could I pass that one to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a classic sales guy answer and say it depends. But no,
that's okay. That's legal's answer, Ed.
That's a legal answer too. The sales answer is, well, what works for you, right? So, it is indicative upon a few things, but in essence, a sales user would be considered a user of the platform, a user of the integration, which ties into ContractPod. They would be a requester and probably have some type of read-only access. So they would be defined as what we would call a business user, right? Now, obviously, that is a license and a seated user, which comes with part of the subscription. But there is some flexibility. If there's some economies of scale that we want to work with, if we're looking at enterprise-wide license, we can do blanket packages. We can do API blanket licenses as well. So there is some flexibility in terms of the variation and then the number and the types of licenses.
That's great. Thanks, Ed. Next question. Do you integrate with Salesforce CPQ? Not directly, but we actually integrate. What we integrate to there was that quote record within Salesforce. And that quote record actually within the environment we showed you there was actually created using Salesforce CPQ. So it's not a direct interaction as such. What we're interacting with are essentially the opportunity and the quote records that Salesforce CPQ also operate against. And we directly use that information to create the contract. Obviously, that then would be part of your standard CPQ flow within there. So once you've priced and quoted within CPQ, you would be calling out to ContractPod to create those order forms, or even to create contracts around those quotes as well as you actually require to.
Yeah, and Howard, if I can layer in a little bit there too, we've heard struggles against creating contracts from CPQ, right? The tabular data does not translate nicely to Salesforce own internal contracting tools and other tools as well. So what we've really done is really pass that data back and forth between Salesforce and ContractPod, so that we're actually creating a similar table in ContractPod, which then we can very easily map into the templates in the system. So kind of reducing some of that friction that we were talking about earlier of getting the data into a contract format that looks nice. So
that's great. Thanks, Jess. Next question, probably one for you again there, Jess. Is the AI review generative AI?
Yeah, that's a great question, one that I'm very excited to answer, because so what you saw today is our very kind of standard out of the box AI tools, right? The extractions which then all become reportable. From there, you can also go and jump into the contract, review context, etc. But we also have additional advanced AI tools, which we did not cover today in the demo, that use those generative AI capabilities and large language models to further help your review of your contract. So for example, we can use generative AI to create an executive summary of your contract. So you can see that high level information around what's in your contract, and that's configurable to your requirements. Or we can have generative AI give you redlining options if it's determined that an area in your contract is ripe for review, because maybe there's a contract that you haven't negotiated with this party or with other parties before, but the AI has identified that there are variations in language across all of your contracts. And so it can give you some options to use. Again, but keeping that human element in the equation where, it's giving you options that then you can select to include in the contract. So those are kind of the two main areas where we're using generative AI in contract review. We have additional tools as well, giving you additional redlining capabilities around making certain clauses more favorable or improving enforcement mechanisms. But that is included in that more advanced AI capabilities that we offer.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, really, really exciting developments in that area from us. So please do keep checking what we're doing in that area, and obviously let us know if you'd like to know any more. Next question, is the integration displayed today currently only available with the Salesforce platform, or is it available with other sales platforms? Now, we can absolutely integrate to other sales platforms as well. So one we have integrated to before also is Dynamics CRM as one example. So obviously, we're always interested to understand which CRM platforms that organizations use, but at the end of the day, we have the capability to integrate to really any platform that that any of our customers have. And final question on the Q&A at the moment is, what benefit do the different dashboard options offer in comparison to the report feature if a report has already been saved and can be run repeatedly? Jess, can I hand that one to you again?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's kind of key about the dashboards is that they let you visualize that data, that you can that same sort of data that you can capture in, an Excel spreadsheet. But that really lets you see where, there might be trends in contracting. So maybe a particular customer that you're working with takes twice as long to get to signature as anybody else. That data can be captured in an Excel format, and that can be regularly, rerun on an automated basis. But that can also be something that you can easily see in just a snap, in a kind of graph format, right? So letting you really easily see trends in data is really where those dashboards, I think, come to life. Now, absolutely, there are other areas where reports in just an Excel format are preferred, right? So if I want to go see a list once a month of every contract that's up for expiration in the next 3 months, that's something that can be quickly and easily delivered to my inbox on a regular basis. So they each have their own kind of unique uses and highlights that our system can support.
That's great. Thanks very much, Jess. No further questions on the Q&A. So I think we're just a couple of minutes to go anyway. So I think with that, I would really like to thank you all for your time today. Thank you for joining us. If you have any further thoughts, questions, queries about anything you've seen today, please do get in contact with us, and we'll be delighted to answer any questions you have, or show you this in any further depth.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.